Hello there, and welcome to another kit analysis featuring Hunter, the leader of the Bad Batch. This kit analysis is going to be strange, as he's the leader of a faction that we haven't seen yet. As a result, this analysis is going to have to be more speculation based than I'd like. Due to the rollout plan that CG has revealed, I think we'll need to revisit all of these kits as a package once we've seen the big picture, but for now, let's work with what we've got. Hunter presents as a bizarre mix of incredible potential power and potential issues. His stats clock in as mostly below average, with an abysmal speed of 138 at Gear 13. Things don't get much better for him elsewhere, as his offense clocks in at a slightly disappointing 5800 at Relic 7. 73% physical crit chance puts him plenty within reach of 100%, and as a strength attacker, his armor penetration gets a solid boost from Mastery at 424. His health steal is also top percentile for the game at 45%. His potency is pretty low at 33%, but I wouldn't worry about this much due to his leadership. On the other hand, 36% base tenacity is low enough that this character will struggle to hit competitive tenacity levels, even with a full dedicated mod set. 63,000 health and 50,000 protection also makes for a very nice bulky set of base stats to work with. With his abysmal base speed, you'd like to believe that his lead might make up for it, but the lead has no speed or Terminator mechanics to speak of. Now, this doesn't mean that the squad won't have some source of extra speed. Even within the same faction, we have Rex Unique as an example of how another squad can gain speed from a Unique, but for now, this squad looks extremely slow. We start off with a nice extra helping of stats, with 35% health and protection offering excellent scaling with potential mod investments, and 50% potency, meaning that this faction will very rarely have to worry about adding more mods. We do see some extra defensive mechanics, but they come in a conditional form that might be difficult to maintain. 50% crit avoidance is a fantastic number that should immediately grab your attention, but so far we've only seen one source of evasion up. It doesn't exist at the start of the match. It's going to take a while to get out. It can be dispelled, and it's not going to be brought back that often. I think it's safe to assume that at least one other member of the Bad Batch will be able to create it, but for now this feels more like an icing on the cake for another ability more than a core stat that the faction will always have. I'd like to say fingers crossed that the faction gets a better source. I love crit avoidance as a stat and its high impact, but I'm really not looking for evasion to come back to the game, so I'm mixed on it. Now for where things start to get crazy. His lead includes a clause that states that a Bad Batch ally with defense up does AoE true damage when they use an ability. This true damage has a ratio of 120% of the offense of the character who's dishing it out. Unfortunately, this means that characters like supports and tanks won't be able to make as much usage out of this as a dedicated damage dealer. But fortunately, it's worth noting that this isn't capped to once a turn, and can work on assists and counterattacks. This is going to matter later in this kit analysis, so keep it in mind. Continuing on the crazy tool train, we have the clause that Bad Batch clones remove a staggering 50% Terminator when they damage and expose. This is a huge payoff and fairly repeatable as well. This will likely end up feeling incredibly core to this faction's gameplay identity. We don't know how many exposed sources they'll have, but just by using Hunter's basic alone, it already feels pretty accessible. Critically, we also see that it can't be resisted, which means that this will always be a reliable payoff for its setup. This is an excellent stall tool that could lead to some real build-around opportunities for locking down certain threats. All in all, this is a leadership that doesn't really give us the immediate wow factor that some of the top or mid-meta leaderships do. It's not all bad, there's some powerful tools to use here, but this leadership is really going to need the rest of the squad to make up for missing defensive mechanics or early tempo. The extra reliance on being able to keep buffs means there's a bit too much of a degree of hoping you don't get dispelled for my tastes, and dispel is extremely common in the game now. Moving along to his basic, we see a very promising ability, especially in context of his leadership. We know that hitting exposes always removes 50% Terminator, and this basic being a double tap means that there's some serious potential for control. It's hard to say how easily this faction would be able to pre-debuff the target ahead of time, but if this is consistent, there's a ton of potential here. More than just utility, his basic sports a 250% offense ratio, which becomes 500 if it double taps. Now, while this offense ratio is impressive and a bit scary, keep in mind that even at Relic 7, our offense is lower than other attackers with similarly scary numbers. To give a frame of reference, Dark Trooper's Punch is a 1000% ratio that can't crit with a base offense of 6400, and General Skywalker has a 1050% ratio that can crit with 6400 offense. Both of these characters also have abundantly easier access to damage buffs and stat boosts that help elevate them to their fullest potential. From what we know so far, Hunter doesn't have that luxury, with offense up being mentioned in his kit but inaccessible. It's also worth the honorable mention that Shaak Ti's double assist call will give him a third basic as well as 25% crit damage, upping our ratio to 750% and ensuring that we should remove 100% of the target's turn meter, and providing another expose proc for a total of 60% potential health damage. We've already started to see in the next Bad Batch kits that Bad Batch might be written to not want to add Shaak Ti to the team, but if she can fit in, there's a lot of synergy between her kit and Hunter's basic. Overall, this basic both packs a punch and brings a lot of utility. Its damage output will be formidable, but not record-breaking. As an assist target, this will always be a tempting option. The one potential downside would be that it's a bit too reliant on Hunter being in the lead slot, but otherwise, a very solid basic overall. Moving to his first special, we have a decent utility package that feels way too vulnerable to this game's numerous ways to AoE dispel. Evasion and Stealth are decent buff pickups, especially in context of the leadership giving you 50% crit avoidance while you have Evasion up. But quite literally every relevant team in the game right now has at least one way to deal with this. Best case scenario, you're using this team on offense, you wait for the AI to burn its AoE dispel move, and then you can pop this. Worst case scenario, you try to put this team on defense, your team gains these buffs for about 10 seconds, and it's gone again. The conditional is also a bit confusing, since Hunter cannot use this ability while stealth based on Bad Batch kits alone. Again, we see an opportunity for Shaak Ti to help this squad out, with her turn meter swap being a way to give Hunter stealth. But it's still unclear at this time on if she can be added to the squad safely. I think it's safe to assume that someone else in the Bad Batch squad can help him out before his first turn, but it's hard to judge this part of this ability until we know how easily it'll come up. For now, this part of this ability might as well not exist. It also has a damage component, and its output is respectable. 220% offense ratio means this has the potential to pack a punch, and will do more than a similar clone move like Echo's Grenade by default, but it's not a shocking level of damage. It's fine. All in all, this ability feels like it's reliant on the player to time well on offense. If you try to post this team on defense, I don't think this ability will be particularly hard to deal with. I'm a little bit nervous to see Evasion Up making a reappearance into the game, as it can and will add RNG at times, but at least it can be dealt with. Approaching the end of the kit, we have his second special, a nifty trick. Turn meter swaps have always been useful in the history of this game, but this has a different flavor than we're used to seeing. Instead of a sustain or support move for the swap target, this is more of an ability to control the enemy team. It's hard to know how excited to be for a turn swap in this squad when we still don't know who he's swapping to for a big payoff. I assume that Crosshair will be the likely swap target, so we need to see his kit before knowing how powerful this will be. Still, we can rate what we see so far, and I'm a bit bummed by the potential inconsistency of the ability. The expose and stun components both can be resisted, meaning the only guaranteed aspects of this move are the swap and the taunt ignore. It's also slightly clunky that we have the expose tied to the first part of the move before we gain the taunt ignore, meaning that the expose and potential turn meter removal won't be on the character that we want to hit if the enemy team had a taunting tank. Still, this ability feels like one with a lot of potential for skill expression, both when driving the team mid-fight, as well as planning out your turn order ahead of time in your modding. We know that Hunter isn't exactly flexible in his turn order placement due to his horrible speed, but depending on what this squad is capable of, this ability offers a great opportunity to try to enhance that strength. deciding who to grant the taunt ignore to at various points in the fight should offer some interesting decision making, and I can't wait to see how the rest of the squad makes use of this ability. With no unique to speak of, this marks the end of Hunter's kit. At the time of this outro being recorded, we do have Tech's kit already, but we'll dive more into how they can work off of each other in Tech's kit analysis video, which is coming next. I'm not immediately sold on Bad Batch's ability to compete in the meta just yet, but we only have 40% of the full picture at this point. From what we've seen so far, this team has no tools to handle something like the onslaught of the Rebels, or the oppressive control of teams like Darth Revan, or any of the Jedi. Padme would also be a significant struggle, as she negates almost all of the benefits we see in this team. Even a team like General Grievous has a few great ways to deal with Hunter's tricks, as a character like B2 is going to have a great time taking away those buffs he worked so hard to make. Still, we see a lot of potential here, and to buy a spot in this meta, we need to see either ways to help Bad Batch weather the storm, or a massive payoff for if they can keep it together long enough to set up a big play. I had planned to have a big segment here talking about Shaak Ti's overall appeal in this team, but unfortunately we've already started to see some confirmation in Tech's kit that she may not be welcome here. Tech's unique brings a clause that stipulates that all allies must be clone troopers for certain rewards, and based on the rest of his kit, it's a very big payout to miss out on. It's unfortunate, but realistically, I don't think Shaak Ti can afford to leave Jedi Master Luke's side for the near future. She's the only Jedi who can provide any decent amount of protection healing to Luke for his taunt. She's the team's main dispel source, and her cleanse is useful to boot. It still feels tragic to me that she's shackled to that team considering the sheer volume of her kit that only works for clones, but I think that just speaks to how desperate the Jedi are to have somebody like her on the team despite losing most of her kit's value. It doesn't completely rule out her joining the Bad Batch, but I think it's safe to assume that Hunter's lead is going to be core to the faction working properly. It's possible that their speeds might be so slow that Shaak Ti's lead might become necessary, and it's something we'll need to continue to monitor as we get a better picture of what's in the Bad Batch. I'm sure Tech's kit will start to get us some data on how this team will play. Thanks for watching.